on the Anusota Sutta, the sutta on going with the flow. And it was just as common in the Buddhist time to join a group, and even a so-called spiritual group, and you follow what the group is doing rather than actually developing what the Buddha taught. And that's a very powerful influence that we have. The Buddha speaks repeatedly about being mindful of our associations, because it truly is who we associate with and what we associate with that's going to determine our experience, and certainly eventually our awakening, our developing full human maturity. So it's something to be mindful of. It doesn't mean that we should isolate ourselves from other people. It simply means that we should be mindful of what we associate ourselves with. And another word for associations is clinging. In other words, if groups of people have certain views that aren't in accordance with the Eightfold Path, they should be recognized and not something that we should associate with or cling to. So the Buddha's words: the individual who goes with the flow continues to indulge their sensual passions and performs mindless deeds. These will continue in confusion and disappointment. Then the Buddha says there are 4 types of individuals in the world. There is the individual who goes with the flow. There is the individual who goes against the flow. There is the individual who remains steady in the Dhamma, and there is the individual who has gained release from clinging, whose mind is settled in equanimity. That's an arahant, or an awakened human being. Then the Buddha continues, the individual who goes against the flow does not indulge their sensual passions or perform mindless deeds. Even though they still feel pain and sorrow, they do so with mindfulness. They live the wholesome life that is pure. And that's such an important statement. We can often obscure reality by being distracted by what everyone else is doing, including as a Dhamma practitioner, if that's not well focused in what the Buddha taught. It's too easy for our ego personalities to cling to other ego personalities in an attempt to go with the flow. And there's many underlying subtle reasons for that. We don't like to get our friends or associates upset with us by stating something different or practicing something different. And we have a natural tendency to cling, meaning to cling to what other people are doing, whether it's actually true Dhamma practice or not. The Buddha continues, the individual who remains steady in the Dhamma has ended the 5 fetters. They will achieve the unbound. They will be released. In other words, he's just pointing out the importance of remaining well focused on the Dhamma. The individual who has gained release from clinging, their mind settled in equanimity, the arahant, the awakened one, has ended the mental fermentations, or fermentations are troubling aspects or troubling concepts in the mind. They are released from clinging to objects and views, their mindfulness steady and unmoving. These are the 4 types of individuals to be found in the phenomenal world. People unrestrained in sensual passions, indulging sensuality, will continue their confusion and suffering. Seized by desire, going with the flow, the enlightened one, with mindfulness well established, having abandoned sense desires and mindlessness, experiencing disappointment and disenchantment, they go against the flow. So the Buddha is really making a strong statement that if you're going to develop his teachings, you are likely going to find yourself continually going against the flow. And that's certainly true. As my understanding of the Dhamma developed, I realized that the new developing right views that I was acquiring were often in complete contradiction to everything that I had learned about myself in relation to the world. That can be very difficult, especially at first, until we realize how important it is to recognize these conditioned views and let them go. And until we have that experience of greater peace of mind, greater stillness in our life, it's hard to trust the process. But of course, we can take refuge in the fact that a human being actually did this, and he left his teachings, and certainly being part of a well-focused group, a Sangha, is supportive of that. And that speaks directly to the 3 refuges. Let me continue with the Buddha's words. Having abandoned the five fetters, they are perfect in their practice. They will not lose their way. With mindfulness and composure, they remain steady. Having gained release from clinging, all fetters destroyed. Their confusion and suffering has ended. They have done all to be done. There is nothing left for distraction and disappointment to cling to. That's the end of the Buddha's words there. With almost infinite distractions of the world today, including what is considered Dhamma practice, it is often difficult to not go with the flow and engage in popular practices or ideas. So for many years, I was engaged in modern Buddhism, and I studied and practiced with most of the major schools, major Mahayana schools. And looking back, I'm surprised even now how quickly I attached to their practices and rituals, even though they didn't seem to make much sense to me, or I didn't even understand the usefulness of them. But I did it anyway, because there's this subtle underlying concept in modern Buddhism that this is a very difficult to understand practice, and certainly the later developed schools, the more mystical schools, are very difficult to understand. But it's often portrayed that it takes many, many lifetimes, limitless lifetimes, to develop this Dhamma. But just go ahead and go with the flow and follow whoever you're following. And eventually, untold millennials in the future, you may gain awakening. That always concerned me, but I always did it because I was influenced strongly by the groups that I was practicing with. It wasn't until I read the teachings of the Buddha as preserved in the Pali Canon that I realized that he taught a very simple and direct Dhamma whose purpose was to awaken or gain full human maturity in this lifetime. And that often requires us to look very closely at our associations. And as far as Dhamma practice is concerned, to really limit that Dhamma associations with people that are well focused on the Buddha's Dhamma, if we are to develop what the Buddha actually taught. In other words, if we're trying to mix and match, or trying to reconcile different groups or be parts of different groups, in other words, being part of a well-focused Sangha, but then being part of maybe something that is into a lot of different concepts or different teachers, it's going to be nearly impossible to stay focused on what the Buddha actually taught. And that's really what the Buddha was talking about. The problem was just as prevalent 2,600 years ago as it is now. And it really is a matter of asking ourselves, what do we want to develop? Do we want to develop the Buddha's Dhamma because it's simple and direct and it's right there in front of us? It does take some effort, but the instructions are very clear. If you're lucky enough to have a well-focused Sangha, join that Sangha and participate in developing your understanding of the Four Noble Truths, your understanding of your own contributions to confusion, delusion, and suffering. And then you can have the direct experience of awakening in this human life. So that's the end of the talk today. Kevin, I guess you really can't join me. We're going to have to figure out the other kinks to this. But I hope it's okay. I'm going to give you a call. I'm going to stop the broadcast and give you a call because I'd like to hear what you encountered when you joined today and make this a little bit more clear in the future. So thank you all for joining today. I hope you got some benefit from this, and I'll be broadcasting or podcasting again next Wednesday. Peace.